Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. This large bag is what we're making today. This is a highly modified Dallas duffel bag by Swoon. I changed this pattern up quite a bit, mainly because in the pattern it is a drop-in lining, and I have a hard time doing drop-in linings when the top is a zipper. So I have modified this to be a binding finish, and I also added a bottom on it. In the Dallas duffel bag pattern, the front and the back panels just join right here, and there's a seam in the middle down the bottom. I like a bag to have a nice sturdy bottom, so I added that in too. It's really hard to show this bag, it is so big. It does come in multiple sizes. This is the large size. Let me show you some of the features of this bag. So it has a pocket that goes all the way across here. We have our crossbody straps here. I used a cotton webbing here. You could use a seatbelt webbing. You could also do this all in vinyl if you wanted to. Again, I added on a vinyl bottom, so I also have Peltex in this vinyl piece on the bottom. And inside, it is just ginormous. And it has one zipper pocket on this side. It would be so easy to add other pockets into this very easily. You could add like side pockets on if you wanted, or a pocket on the back. Very customizable. Now, as I said, what I did differently here is I added a bottom. It is a binding finish. What did I use for interfacing in this bag? I used Pellon Flex Foam as my stabilizer. Yeah, and then a piece of Peltex in the bottom. I didn't use any woven interfacing, as I used canvas, cotton canvas, for all of my cotton pieces here. So canvas, you do not need to use a woven interfacing. Usually with this bag, I choose to use a canvas, mainly because it would take a ton of woven interfacing, and that can get kind of costly and time consuming because you gotta fuse that all on. So besides that, I didn't make any other changes. It pretty much covers my whole body. This fabric is a spoon flower fabric. All of my matte black hardware is from Atelier Fiber Arts. What else? I think that's really all there is to say about this bag. So yeah, without further ado, let's get to making this bag.
Okay, so you're going to need number 5 zipper tape. You are going to need some rivets. You're going to need some kind of webbing, 2 D-rings, 2 swivel clasps, a slider, 4 zipper pulls, and 2 strap ends if you would like to have them on your bag. Okay, I'm going to be using Pellon Flex Foam for my main stabilizer. You're going to take your bottom pieces and you're going to cut them 25 inches by 9 inches. Again, this is for my hack and one of my modifications to this bag. You're going to need your front zipper pocket and your lining zipper pocket lining pieces. You're going to need some binding, whichever binding method you prefer. Now you're going to need 2 end panels in your lining and your exterior fabric. You are going to need your front and back panels. Now I have adjusted these and I cut them from 25 inches to 16¼ inches. You are going to need 4 zipper ends. Okay, so I'm going to take all my exterior pieces and I am going to baste them onto foam. Okay, so now that that's done, we want to take our front exterior piece and flip it so the wrong side is down. And we are just going to cut away some of this foam in order to take away some of the bulk when we're doing that front vertical zipper pocket. So I'm measuring down from the left-hand side on the back, 3 inches down and 5 inches in, and just drawing some lines on the foam to about 9 inches. I'm going to measure in 1/2 inch from that line we just drew and make a little square. Now this doesn't have to be pretty. This is just giving us an area guideline to where we're going to cut away this foam for our zipper installation. Okay, so you're going to kind of pull your flex foam away like this. So using fusible foam will not work with this method. Make sure you don't cut that front panel at all. We just want to cut through the foam. So I'm kind of pinching it away. And again, this doesn't have to be pretty. All we are doing is making it so we have less bulk when we install the zipper, because we want it to turn and press the seams of our zipper out nicely. So I'm just cutting down the middle of that rectangle I drew and going up about 1/2 inch on either side and cutting the foam away. Again, making sure you are not cutting into your exterior fabric. Okay, so you can flip that over. You can kind of feel where that hole in the foam is. That's what we want. Now what we want to do is we want to take our zipper pocket lining piece for the exterior, and I'm going to draw a line 1.5 inches in from one side on the wrong side. And then on the long sides, I'm going to draw a 1-inch guideline like so. And what we're doing is we are going to be drawing out the lines for our vertical exterior zipper pocket. So from that one line, you want to measure in 1/2 inch. Again, we are doing this exactly how we install any zipper pocket. Draw a line down the middle of that at about 1/4 inch. Go in about 1/2 inch or so from each of those short sides. And then from that line to the corners, make your V's. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to place these right sides together. So you're going to measure in about 3 inches from the right side and 2 inches down from the other. And that's going to give you a guideline where you are going to place this down. Now that line that we just, or that rectangle we drew, should fall, if you feel through, right through where we cut away that foam on the back side. Once it's placed properly, go ahead and pin that here like so. We're going to go ahead and sew around that whole rectangle like we have done, and you can see how the foam is out of the way, which is perfect. So now we can continue with preparing for our zipper installation. So that center line that we drew, we want to take our scissors and go ahead and cut down that way all the way to those short 1/2 inch lines. Again, I do have a tutorial down below on how to do a zipper pocket if you need a slowed down version. So then you're going to cut from that line out into those V's without cutting our stitches where we did that rectangle. Being very careful not to cut those stitches. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and you are going to stuff that zipper lining through the hole, bringing the exterior and the lining piece wrong sides together. And then because I am using fabrics, I'm going to go ahead and press that in place. So this is what we have here. Now I am using double-sided tape. Only use double-sided tape if your machine can handle it. I like it because it holds my zipper in place where it needs to be. Otherwise you can use pins or hold it in place. So we want to make sure our zipper pull is closing to the top, and we want to position it nice and centered into that hole. Using, if you're like me, using the double-sided tape to hold it in place. You can also use pins to hold it in place as long as you're not using a vinyl exterior, because that would leave holes in it. So take your time. You want the zipper to be nice and straight because it is on the front of the bag. Once you get that one side done, you're going to go ahead and take the tape off the other side and position that other side where we want it to go. And then once we have that all placed, we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to top stitch that zipper in place. Right around here. Okay, so because this is the front of the bag, I don't want to do a back stitch because we don't want to have that ugly back stitch where it's a little bit thicker in thread. So I'm pulling my threads long And I'm not going to backstitch. I'm just going to start sewing 1/8 of an inch in from that zipper. Make sure your needle is down before you pivot. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull on my bobbin thread to pull that top thread through. Move your zipper pull out of the way if you need to. And as you come to where we started, we want to make sure that our needle ends down in that starting stitch that we did. So in that first hole. So I will do a little bit of hand cranking to make sure I can position that needle exactly where it needs to go. Pull those threads long. Tug on the bobbin thread to pull that top thread through. And then we have a nice continuous line without the back stitch. Tied those 4 threads off. I like to do 3 or 4 knots. And then because I'm using a bonded thread, I also like to take my lighter just to melt the ends of those threads to make sure that there is no fraying and they won't come loose. Okay, so now we want to close up that pocket. So we're going to take the other end and bring those short ends together and secure them with clips, as well as the other 2 sides that are not connected. Okay, and from the folded side of that pocket, you're going to pull the exterior out of the way, start down on one side of that fold, and we're going to stitch up. I'm using it about a 3/4 of an inch seam allowance here or so. So this is coming up one side, starting at the folded edge. When I get to the zipper, I like to go back and forth a few times just to create a little bit more security for a zipper stop. Pivot, go across the top, again making sure you're pulling your exterior fabric out of the way. You should only be sewing your lining fabric, your zipper pocket lining fabric. And then down the other side. And that zipper pocket is done. Okay, so we have a functioning zipper pocket. Now we want to put on the straps. So we want to find the centers of our exterior pieces. So I'm just folding them in half and making small clips where my center is. I'm going to double check. It should be about 12.5 on either side of that notch, and I am. Now we're going to measure in 9 inches from the left-hand side and draw a line. And do the same on the other side. And this is going to help guide us to where we are going to place our straps. Again, I'm just double checking that I'm all centered. Okay, then you're going to take your 2 handle webbing pieces. Again, I am using a cotton webbing. I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottom of this. And I am going to line it onto the outside of that line we just drew. You want to make sure this is nice and straight. And the double-sided tape is okay to use for any machine, as long as we keep it outside of that top stitch line. We will be top stitching these down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You are going to bring your strap around, making sure it's not twisted, and do the same with the other end. Placing it on the outside, so to the right of that line that we just drew. I'm just going to double check that we are nice and centered still. If it's not straight, go ahead and readjust like I'm doing. Once you're satisfied it's centered, we are going to measure down from the top 3 inches on that strap from the top of the main panel. And then 1.5 inches down from that line that we just drew. And then we're also going to draw a cross in between those lines. We're going to go up here, across here, and down with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to do our X's on all 4 of our straps. So again, we're going to measure down 3 inches, another 1.5 inches, draw our cross or our X to give our stitching guidelines. Okay. And we also want to make sure that we're going to be pulling our lining pocket out of the way because we do not want to sew that into our straps. So to start, we're not going to worry about that X at first. We're just going to go up this up one side, across the top line we drew, and back down the other side with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to do that X. So I'm going to sew across that bottom line. Needle down, and then we're going to pivot the first diagonal. Work up that diagonal. When we get to that top line, pivot. We're going to go across that top line again. It's double stitching it, but that's okay. It adds more security. Pivot and go down the diagonal line again. And backstitch. Now you're going to do the exact same thing with the other strap. Be very careful that you are pulling that zipper pocket out of the way because you do not want to sew through that. And then go ahead and do the exact same thing with the other 3 straps. Okay, and repeat with the back panel. Okay, so now I am going to prepare my zipper. So I've cut my zipper to 22 inches. Again, this is different than the pattern because we are not doing a drop-in lining. I'm going to take 2 of my zipper ends. I'm going to put them right sides together, sandwiching our zipper tape in. We're going to go across here with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, fold them wrong sides together, and then top stitch with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both ends. So we get something that looks like this. I'm going to trim the zipper ends up even width with our zipper tape. Again, I cut each of these 4 pieces 3 inches to 1.5 inches, I think. Okay, so now we're going to take our lining piece. I went ahead and I put in my zipper pocket already. You're going to do it the exact same way that we did our external pocket, but make sure it's in a horizontal orientation. Now I am using double-sided tape because I do this with all of my zipper installation. If you your machine does not like the double-sided tape, please use clips instead. So I'm going to take my main lining panel, have it right sides up, as well as have my zipper tape right side up. I'm going to find my center by matching up the folds of my zipper ends there, taking a little bit of chalk and just drawing that center, and then matching that center with that center notch of my top of the top of my lining panel here, and then either clip it or stick it down with the tape. It's okay that our zipper tabs are too long. We will trim that up here shortly. So again, both of these are right sides up. I'm going to trim these up now so they match my lining panel. And now I'm going to take my exterior panel. We're going to put this right sides together. Again, I am using a double-sided tape. You can go ahead and use clips if your machine does not like double-sided tape. And put this right sides together and stick them together. And then we're going to go ahead and sew across that zipper with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Right, so I've put on my zipper foot so I can get nice and close to my teeth without having a wavy zipper. I've got my seam guide here so I know where my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance is, and I'm going to sew across. Okay, and once that's done, we want to press our exterior and our lining panels wrong sides together. Again, you can do this with an iron or you can finger press it. I, once again, am using my double-sided tape because my machine is okay with it and I really like my double-sided tape. And I find that it helps press this really nice and taut away from that zipper and hold it in place really well. And same with the lining, you want to pull that wrong sides together with that exterior piece. Pull it nice and tight away from that zipper. Especially wash the lining because we want to make sure it doesn't slip up, because if it gets stuck up in the zipper teeth, that's where we can have our zipper get jammed. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and top stitch right along here with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold those in place. Then you're going to go ahead with the other two panels and do the exact same thing with the other side of the zipper tape. So now it kind of looks like we have a pouch here. This is what we have. So now you're going to take one of your main panels and your two lining panels and flip them out of the way. We only want to be working with one of the main panels. You're going to take your bottom piece and you are going to find the center of the short sides. That'll help us later when we go to attach our sides. And then you're going to clip this to the bottom of one of the external pieces, making sure you're not catching any lining in there. The lining is flipped and out of the way. And then we're going to go across here with the 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and then once that's done, we want to press that seam towards the bottom of the bag. And then we are going to top stitch through the bottom to hold that seam in place. Again, you can finger press this. If you aren't using vinyl, you can use an iron. I'm using vinyl here, so I'm definitely going to use my tape to press that seam nice and taut. And then we will top stitch it in place. So I'm just double checking that my seam is staying where it needs to because I got that thick foam in there. So I'm just kind of reaching under and making sure my seam is pointing towards the bottom panel. And then after this, you're going to go ahead and attach your other exterior main piece to the opposite side of the exterior bottom panel. Okay, so we have that all done. Now it's the tricky part of doing the top stitching of that other bottom panel because we have to do it in a tube. We have formed a tube. So just take your time doing this. As you can see, I'm kind of stitching from the inside of the bag. But you take your time. It is completely doable. We have nice big opening here, so it's not too much trouble to get it through. It's just a little bit awkward. Again, making sure you're not catching any of the lining panels. We're going to repeat this with the lining panels. So that is the exterior done. Now you're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with the lining pieces, but do not worry about the top stitching. I didn't top stitch my lining panels at all on that bottom. Just go ahead and attach the bottom to both sides of the lining panels. Okay, now this is the fun part. This is what we have. So we want to move these in such a way that we are putting the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. So I'm reaching in through the lining and I'm kind of turning it out. So we want the bag to be inside out, but we want the lining piece to be outside, and we want these to be wrong sides together. And those side panels we're turning it through are nice and big, so this makes it very easy to do. All right, and then that is the main part of the body done, and now we can prep for our sides and our binding. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to match up all of my seams and all of my centers and go ahead and clip them together. And we are going to baste the lining and the exterior panels together, just in these side areas. So match up the two bottom seams. And evenly distribute that fabric together. Okay, so that's done. So if I was doing this on my flatbed, I would go ahead and I would stitch it from the inside and baste it with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but I'm going to take this to my cylinder arm because it just makes things so much easier, and it's the exact reason why I bought the cylinder arm. But it's completely doable on a flatbed machine, or if you have a machine with a free arm, that works too. So I'm basting these with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I have also switched to a matching thread that is going to match my lining and my interior fabric, just so if my binding when I do it goes wonky, it's not as noticeable if I have messy stitching, because the thread matches the lining fabric. Not that anybody really sees the binding, it gets tucked up into the corners, but just in case. So once this side is done, you're going to go ahead and repeat it with the other side as well. Okay, so now let's prep these side pieces. So let's find the bottom and top centers of our side panels. Okay, and we are going to take our crossbody strap connectors. I've already gone ahead and made my crossbody strap. I'm marking down 1.5 inches from one of the top ends. I'm going to take some double-sided tape up the middle, just like we did with the straps. I'm going to take my D-ring, put it to that 1.5 inch mark I drew, and fold it under, securing that loose end with the double-sided tape. And then we are going to go ahead and make sure we're nice and centered. I'm going to draw a line down the middle and then use that as a guideline to center my crossbody strap connector here. Again, measuring just to make sure we are indeed center. Okay, and I'm going to measure down 1.25 inches from the folded end of our hardware there and draw a line, and that's going to give me a guideline for where I'm going to stitch across. So we're going to go up here, across here, and down, and apply 2 rivets. So I've already applied my rivets, as you can see. Now we are going to take our lining panels, both our exterior and our lining, and we were going to place them wrong sides together and clip them in place. Okay, so that is done. Adjust as needed. And then we're going to go ahead and baste these together on both side panels. Okay, so now we are almost done. It's time to connect these side panels to our bag. So we're going to find our bottom centers, start there, match our notches that we clipped, and clip them together. Now for our top center, we're going to take the center notch of our side panel, and we are going to line it up as centered as we can with that zipper tab that we made. That should be the center there, and so yeah, just kind of eyeball it, make sure it's in the center of that tab, and you should be golden then. And then once you get a couple clips in the bottom and a couple clips in the top, you can go ahead and clip all the way around the side, evenly distributing that fabric around the curve. And you will repeat this with the other side as well. Okay, and then I'd take this on my flatbed, go around here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, I'm going to take this to my cylinder arm, so it'll look a little bit different, but still the same idea what we're doing. We have both of those sides done, and now all we have left to do is bind it. I'm just going to double check that all my seams look good and everything got caught. Now you go ahead and you bind it your preferred method. I prefer to use bias tape. If you want to see how I do that, I have the class down below. You can use waterproof canvas as well. Okay, and there we are. So go ahead and turn it out. Turns very easy. It's a very large opening. Press out all of your seams nice and taut. Attach your crossbody strap, and then we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all, folks. She's large and she's in charge. So thank you so much for tuning into my tutorial. If you did like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you would like to support my channel further, you could buy me a coffee. All that is down below in the description. Anyways, until the next one, bye.